presentation is called Death of the Form Factor, so no drama here. I'll explain why we've called this presentation Death of the Form Factor. And we're going to talk a little bit about responsive design in our new product. We'll go into some of those details later.
I think your mic is not working.
Okay,
Let's see.
it's not on mute. Can we?
Is it on? Does mine work?
No.
No, so we don't have audio feed. It is on. Yeah.
Oh,
Fair enough. Yeah? Does it work now?
No.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet? I can do this all day.
Oh my God.
Shall we? Oh, yeah, we have audio. Okay, great, thanks. So I'll just kick off with short introductions. My name is Vinay Kapoor. I'm the product manager for mobile and parts of collaborative analytics at Qlik. So my responsibility is to drive the strategy and execution of these two areas within the company. My Twitter handle, so some shameless promotion there.
Yeah, my name is Johan. I'm a front-end developer, and I have been in the company for roughly 3 years now. And if you want to see my retweets, then you can follow me.
Just a little bit about Qlik, since I realize not all of you know what is it that we do. Qlik is a company that delivers an analytics platform, which means that if you have data, we'll help you visualize it and analyze it. We have a product that includes a lot of different product families. If you want to know more about the product, feel free to visit our website, qlik.com. You will see and hear a little bit more about our product today. But the presentation today is actually not focused so much on the product. It's focused on how we did certain things within the product to really help our user do what they need to do. The way I present, I like stories and I like a little bit of history. I read a lot. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a few stories which will go into the background of why we took certain decisions into the product, why we landed on responsive design. And then Johan will dig deeper into how we did these, how we implemented this within our product, and how you should think about responsive design if you have to do the things that we did. And I'll start off by talking about this gentleman here. This is the sculpture of a Neanderthal male. Neanderthals were a parallel species of humans, pretty closely related to us, but not really exactly the same species as humans, modern humans. Neanderthals were around from 250,000 to 40,000 years ago, and there was a period of from 40,000 years ago, there was a period when humans were moving from Africa into the plains of Europe, where Neanderthals were very firmly established. Now, if you look at physical characteristics of Neanderthals and humans, Neanderthals were larger and stronger than us. They had more dense bone mass, they had bigger muscles, they were taller, they had a larger cranial capacity, which means that they were probably smarter than us. The reality is that they are not around today. They did not make it through the evolution. However, I want you to meet their cousins, the human race. The not so smart cousins. So we were not as strong as Neanderthals, right? And we are probably not as smart as they were. This is arguable, obviously, but let's indulge me for a while. But they are not here, and we are. And the question is why? Why is it that the smarter, stronger species did not survive? But we did, and here we are looking at selfies of Justin Bieber, right? And the answer to this lies in this quote. Now this is usually attributed to Sir Charles Darwin. It's not. This quote is by a professor in Louisiana, but very accurately describes what Sir Charles Darwin observed in the origin of the species. And the quote says that if you look at all of the data available to you from evolution, and you look at all of the species, it's not the smartest of the species that survived. And it's not the strongest of the species that survived. The species that survived in evolution are those that are adaptable to change. Adaptability to change is a key characteristic for any species. And this is true not just for evolution, it's true for business, and it's true for technology. So let's talk about mobile for a minute and talk about change that it's causing. So mobile is nothing new, right? Everyone in this room should know that mobile has been around for a while, right? What's interesting about mobile is today, if you look at the global subscription numbers, there are 4.5 billion unique subscribers globally. 4.5 billion. Now, that's not the number of SIM cards, because the number of SIM cards is actually more than the number of people on the planet. Because a lot of people tend to have more than one SIM card, right? But look at the unique subscribers, it's that number. It's a shocking number because it's more people than have access to basic sanitation. So mobile has come to a point where it's not a luxury, it's a utility. So when you think about mobile and you think about experiences that you develop for mobile, you need to think about the fact that you're going to probably reach out to one of the widest audiences anyone has ever reached in the history of mankind. And this is not just about fun and games, right? It's not just about those micro moments that we talk about when we talk about mobile. Few minutes here and there that you can grab to do something, which is very interesting because with this, the watch, now that is down to a few seconds, right? What's interesting about the watch is that as a developer, you have to think about how you grab the user's attention in a few seconds. But with mobile, it's a few minutes. So it's not just about fun and games. The interesting thing about mobile is that you can get what you want, where you want, and when you want. So it's contextual. The context is extremely important. And let's go back to those figures and data. I work with a company that works a lot with data, so I'm always looking at data to sort of to support my assumptions. So let's look at a little bit of data. Here's a visualization, and here's a question for you at the end of this. These are figures for actual and predicted sales of different segments of devices for 2013 and 2014. These are actual figures, and these are predicted figures for 2015. These are by Gartner. Now there are 3 colors in the bar that you can see. Actually, this is a pretty good projector, so you can see 4 of them. There are actually 5 colors there. But let's focus on 3 biggest ones that you see. There's yellow, green, and blue. One of these is the number of smartphones sold over the period. The other one is tablets, and the third one is PCs and laptops put together. Can anyone guess which one is smartphones? Anyone?
The bigger one.
The bigger one, yellow, right? So last year, 1.8 billion mobile devices were sold. This is mobile devices. And of which, 1.2 billion were smartphones. So when you're creating a product, right, and you look at that number, it's obvious which market you want to hit, right? Now what's interesting, if you look at the other two, the green one is tablets, and tablets have started to show, their growth has slowed down, mainly because of the larger smartphones. And you look at PCs and laptops put together, they were actually shrinking until very recently. Towards the end of last year, IDC released figures of PC sales and laptop sales, and the headlines were, it was a fantastic year for the PC. It grew by 1%. So that's a good year for PCs and laptops, right? So it's kind of obvious when you look at this that as a product manager, that's the market I want to go after. But it would be nice if this was this yellow bar was one monolithic device, one single form factor, right? A few years ago when we were developing experiences, we were talking about form factors. Which form factor do you want to hit? But that's not the case anymore. The problem starts here. If you start breaking this down into usage patterns and you look at how people use these devices, there are geographical differences. Certain parts of the world prefer to use one platform, other parts of the world prefer to use another. Android seems to be extremely popular in Asia, whereas iOS is extremely popular in Western Europe, North America. And I still get once in a while an odd call from a customer somewhere who's still using a BlackBerry device. Now look at Android. Android has about 80 to 85% of the market today, right? Shouldn't be news to this audience. But when you start breaking down Android, let's see what happens. So these are figures from a blog run by OpenSignal Maps. This is a tree map. This visualization is called a tree map. It shows you every Android device out in the market as of July last year. And the size of the rectangle actually shows you the market share of that device relative to the rectangle, right? So you have the Galaxy devices, Samsung devices right up top, and here you have these obscure small devices. So this is the total spread of the Android market. Now this is not the scariest part. As a developer, as a product manager, and for those poor souls in IT who are trying to deploy a product onto these devices, the next picture is actually even worse. These are all form factors available on Android as of July last year. All the different screen sizes. Now if you develop products for mobile, you understand the challenge here in terms of testing, developing, right? I see a few heads shaking. I can see pain in some eyes. And how do you deal with this? I mean, how do you develop for this? How do you test against this? That's a challenge. And this is a challenge we came up against a few years ago when we started to create our new product, which we call Qlik Sense today. We realized that we wanted to hit a market that we knew was coming our way. We knew that mobile devices and smartphones were picking up. That was not news. But we also saw this coming. And that was a challenge. We were really scratching our head. To make things worse, what happens today, and this is research from Google, came out a couple of years ago, is that you don't use these devices in isolation anymore. When you're using one, you're usually using it with another. So you look at smartphones, you look at tablets, you look at TV, none of them is used in isolation. So for example, 57% of the people who are using smartphones are using it 28% of the time with the laptop, 29% of the time with the TV. So those multi-screen experiences are extremely important, right? So, and I'm going to hand over to Johan now, who will explain to you how we solved this. So the form factor, as we know it, is dead. There is no such thing as one form factor. You cannot target that. So how do we solve it? We solve it with a very smart technology that Johan will talk about. And remember that when you're thinking about your experience, mobile is just the starting point. You should develop mobile first, but you have to remember, if I go back, this picture, right? So with that, I leave it to Johan to answer the question.
Thank you. Well, like we said, form factor is dead, and I will repeat Vinay. Mobile is not the starting point, because we've seen this in history before. We have gone from desktops to laptops and netbooks and phones and tablets, and now we have this. And what's there in the future? Maybe I want to use my fridge to something. I don't know. The future will only tell. I don't know. So many of you might say, going native. Should we go native or should we not go native? Well, there sure is a lot of pros of going native. We have better performance. I won't argue about that. We have better access to the native APIs. I'm not going to argue about that. But however, I'm going to argue about this. We have these three providers that really, they don't work together. So we need one developer for an Apple device, we need one for a Windows device, and for Android. So there really is a lot of engineers that we need to hire to be able to reach our goal. But luckily, they all have one thing in common, and that is the web. Everyone has access to internet, and all of them supports newer technologies like HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript. And with Canvas, for example, we can paint our visualization in really good resolution and to make them responsive in no time at all. So, what is responsive, some of you might ask? Well, this is from Wikipedia. You don't have to read it, you don't have to know about it. I can just say that the top bullet is about what it is, and the bottom one is how do you do to get responsive web design. So if we look at this one, we're going to look at a really good example that I think is good because it shows exactly what responsive web design is. And it is CSS tricks. And hopefully it will outplay, yes? So you can see that when you resize it, the content of the site automatically fits so that the most important things always is shown at the top. So like this, for instance, the commercial stuff, they will push that down in the bottom because that's probably not what you want to read when you enter the site. You want to read the article. So, really good example of not responsive is our law enforcement site. It looks good, and it can be better, but I have nothing to say against it. But when you enter this one on a Nexus 7 device, what you see is this. The site looks good. Why do I want to go to the mobile version? And why do you scream it to my face? I don't want to see that. I just want the content to fit. But this is not the worst example. This one is even worse. It blocks the entire UI. I have to choose OK or cancel. I can't do anything until I choose something. So that is really bad mobile responsive web design, if you ask me. And the funny thing is, when I was doing this slide, I saw a funny retweet in my Twitter feed, and it was this. And m.site is just a native app that lacks commitment. And yeah, I agree. It really is just a native app that they really don't want to put any effort in at all, if you ask me. So how do we reach a better responsive website then? Well, for starters, we have to target a different amount of devices, like Vinay showed the chart, that there is a lot of devices out there that we need to target. And if you're going to do it accordingly to the textbook, it will look something like this. You don't have to know all the CSS stuff. The thing is, here we are just targeting 7 devices. So are we going to write this to all the devices? And I think a lot of you is thinking, like me and my good friend Exhibit, yeah, but that's not. Don't do this. Go native instead. It is much easier, and you will save a lot of time. No, I don't agree. So what we did at Qlik then, we have to look at all our design and what we wanted it to be and where we wanted the view of our site to change. So we had to redefine the small device term. So for us it was just, when do the site don't work as we want it to do? When does it make sense to create visualizations? So for instance, this year we want to fit on a mobile phone. And it's can be quite hard to fit all of this into a little screen. So what we had to do was just skip the traditional way you just check the device width and height, because it's static, it's not dynamic. We can't do much about it. So we went from this down to this. This is much easier to work with. You just have 2 meter pairs to work with. But one at the top just looks at your area that your view is on the browser and just says that if you're above these values, you will have the desktop experience. And when you are below it, you want to go to the small device. Good, we've done it. But not really. Since we're working with CSS, and we don't have one big CSS file, we have like 200-300, something like that, we can't use this in every single file. It's not manageable. So it's not the main issue, but not the maintenance issue. So luckily, we already use a preprocessor called less. And these are just other preprocessors that you can use, but we was working with less. If you don't know what the preprocessor is, well, have a quick lesson. At the left, you see an example of how you write less, where you basically have 2 classes, but you want the same style on both of them. So you just reference the A style into the B, and out comes this. Yeah, now we're almost there. So this is a rough example of how we do when we want to create design for both desktops and small devices. We don't have to go into details here, this is just to show an example. So this, when I compile it, will turn out to be this. And if I want to change something, I'm just going back here and changing the static variables, and automatically it will generate a new file for me. Good, but something was missing. We're not happy yet. When we go from a big screen to a small device, we want some features to be disabled. We don't want to edit stuff, we don't want to remove stuff. So how do we solve that? CSS is a style, and we can't remove things with CSS. So what we had to do was, like we always do as a front-end developer, JavaScript. JavaScript always saves us. So with match media, we can basically put the media query as a parameter, and it will give us an event back that triggers when it reaches the actual viewing point that we want to trigger. So this is an example of how you can write in JavaScript, and you will automatically get matches when you resize the browser. Good. But we have to turn on to a script called Mecha. Mecha is basically, you take this top here, I don't know, does it have a pointer? No. Yeah, it does. You take this here, and it binds event. It looks through the DOM for all the style sheet that you have, and it looks for an alias that you have created, so you never have to update it. You just have to write this here. So what you're doing here is that you just create an alias, and say that this is desktop, and this is small device, and you just call on desktop and on small device. With this, we now have events that triggers when we reach the desktop size and when we reach the small device size. So by using this, we can in JavaScript remove stuff from the DOM. We can disable features. We can basically do whatever we want. So this basically made our entire structure of how we do responsive web design at Qlik. So I'm going to show you a quick demo of how it looks. And hopefully I have internet, but I'm not sure. It's always the demo monster. Let's see what's happening. Nothing. Please crash. Yeah, let's do like this instead. Yeah, PowerPoint crashed. Not good. Well, we can do this instead. Let's see. I don't know if now you have that one. Let's do it like this instead. So this is how the actual result looks. When we resize, the shards will automatically fix into the contents, and when we hit a certain breakpoint, boom, we change the entire layout of the site. And we remove functions, we add new functions. It just works. So that's basically how we did it. And that's all for me.
So I'll just summarize basically what you saw. So to start with, as a product manager, when we, as a product manager requirement looked at what we wanted to create, we threw a pretty big challenge towards our engineering teams, which is that we want to support everything that's out there. We want a great experience, and we don't want the users to suffer any lag. And the three options we had obviously in front of us was to go native, build an M. site, or take the responsive design route. And what you looked at is how, from an engineering perspective, we solved this challenge with responsive web design without compromising the experience for the user, providing them the best possible experience while spanning across any number of devices. So this will basically work on any HTML5 browser, on any device that's out there, and which is great for us because when Apple or Google come out with new devices, we're not too worried about how this impacts our software. We test a little bit, we have to tweak media queries here and there, but it's pretty much get and go. So that basically concludes our presentation.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
By doing this, it's by removing the device width and height. We can actually run auto test on this as well on a small device. We don't have to hook it up to a phone and run auto test on that. We just execute the browser and we resize it to the site we want to test, and basically we get small device test as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to just open up the floor for questions. We have some time left, about 10-12 minutes. So if you have questions, just throw it at us towards the user experience, with the usability, the product, or towards the implementation. All right. In that case, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.